Welcome back, everybody, to our very last introduction video to the upcoming Three Kingdoms DLC for AoE2 DE. We have done videos covering all of the regional units and new civilizations and all of the testing that we can do associated with the upcoming multiplayer content thus far, and we'll be rounding out our introduction series with an overview of the Wu civilization. Like with the other two of the Three Kingdoms, yes, there's plenty of controversy associated with them, but for the purpose of this video, we are just going to treat the Wu like any other AoE2 civ and cover their bonuses, tech tree, unique units, unique technologies, and of course, testing as to see how exactly those are implemented into the game to figure out which situations you want to be playing the Wu and which situations where you perhaps do not want to be playing them. So guys, if you are interested about the Wu, or if you have an opinion on Sun Jian being a hero in the game, definitely leave a like on the video, comment as to what you think of the civilization, and of course subscribe to the channel for tons more AoE2. The next videos on this channel are going to be all about the actual single-player content, which we'll cover as soon as I'm allowed to cover it. So with that, the Wu. So the Wu are the southeastern of the Three Kingdoms and represent a lot of sort of the more tropical coastal regions of China, going all the way from like around Fujian down to Guangdong and the rivers and coastal ways of that whole area of China. As such, they will be rounding out our archetypes of infantry, cavalry, and archers as the infantry civ as well as the naval civ of the Three Kingdoms. As like I mentioned in the other Three Kingdoms videos, each of the Three Kingdoms represents a different archetype. So you have the Shu covering archers and siege, you have the Wei covering cavalry and cav archers, and now you have finished it out with the Wu covering infantry and navy. So with that, let's jump into the civ bonuses here of the Wu. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, they are indeed an infantry and naval civilization. They have one eco bonus, just like the other Three Kingdoms civs, and this version is that military production buildings and docks provide plus 65 food, kind of an interesting number. I'm sure that was arrived at by lots of testing by the developers, so we'll see exactly what that does. And then you have your main military bonus, which is infantry regenerates 10, 20, 30 HP per minute in feudal, castle, and imperial age. So you do get basically all of your infantry are like berserks, and we'll test that out, of course. Then you have your Jian Swordsmen and Heiguan Cavalry gain +2 attack in the Imperial Age. Your Jian Swordsman is one of your unique units, so it's basically like a Shadow Imperial Age upgrade for them, and the Heiguan Cavalry attack boost we have already covered in their own video and is quite helpful. Their last civ bonus is that Careening and Dry Dock are available one age earlier, and then cost and research -75%, so we'll see just how that is implemented. Their team bonus is ripped right from the Achaemenids, and that is houses are built 100% faster, so I'll show you guys that real quick. And then your unique units, each of the Three Kingdoms has 2 unique units and a hero, and for the case of the Wu, that is the Fire Archer, which is a foot archer, that is your castle unique unit, and then the Jian Swordsman, which is an infantry unit, built at the barracks, and then your hero is Sun Jian. Your unique techs are Red Cliff's Tactics, which are demo ships, and fire archers deal fire damage to ships and buildings, so I'll show you guys that. And then we have Sitting Tiger, which is traction trebuchets and Lo Chuan trebuchet weapons fire additional projectiles, which I've actually already showed you both of those effects before, but I'll revisit those briefly. So those are the bonuses of the Wu, and I will say right now, guys, that although I'm not super stoked on any of the Three Kingdom civs, I do think that the Wu are the most interesting, and will have some fun implications to test out in multiplayer games. That said, of course, bonuses do not exist in a vacuum. We have to look at their tech tree, so let's do that now. Alrighty, so starting as always with the Blacksmith, it is pretty darn good here for the Wu. They only miss one upgrade, and that is Ring Archer Armor. So interestingly, your Fire Archers do not get the full complement of upgrades. That said, you have everything else for your infantry and cavalry, and as we will see, the Wu kind of do both of those things very well. Moving now to the archery range, you can immediately see here, yes, you have Arbalests, but you miss Thumb Ring. Your Cav Archers are really bad, your Skirmishers missed the last Archer upgrade, but you do have your Fire Archer unique unit, you do have all the way through Arbalests, and at least you have decent enough Skirmishers, so I would say that yes, this is the worst of the production buildings for the Wu, but even so, it's still decent enough and can situationally serve you quite well. The barracks is naturally going to be the biggest strength of the civilization, and unsurprisingly, you have champions, halberdiers, and your Jian Swordsman unique unit. Interestingly, you do not have gambesons for your champions, but that is in part to make up for the fact that you have the HP regeneration. So as far as missing upgrades goes, it's not really the end of the world, and the Wu are certainly going to do any sort of infantry play quite effectively. At the stable, it is surprisingly good. You have all the way up through Hussars with full upgrades, and then you have your Heiguan Cavalry, which can get an extra 2 attack in the Imperial Age, and otherwise, again, have full upgrades. So it's not like you're at the level of the Wei when it comes to Cav play, and yet at the same time, it's just going to be solid. You don't have any sort of trade-off like the Wei do with the extra melee armor but less pierce armor. You just get fully upgraded hussars and above-average Haeguang cavalry. It's going to be a bit more simple to slot into regular play, and when you need the cavalry, it is certainly there for you to use. Now, Siege Workshop is going to be not so great. It's definitely the biggest weakness of the Civ. You can see they miss Siege Engineers, and they are the only civilization in AoE2 to miss the Capped Ram upgrade. Every single other civilization in the game either has Capped Ram or has Armored Elephants, which get their own better version of the upgrade anyway. So they're the only civ in the game to have Battering Rams but miss Capped Rams. This means you are very reliant on your Traction Trebuchets to be knocking down buildings, although you have your Fire Archers, which are good against buildings, and Infantry, which again, also good against buildings. So it's not like you're really going to struggle that much in the anti-building regard, but missing good Rams is certainly notable. That said, other than that, you have Onagers and Heavy Scorpions there if you need them. Not really that exciting, but they'll get the job done. And then your Traction Trebuchets with the extra projectiles are definitely going to help you a lot in the late game. Naturally, as a naval civilization, the Wu have a great dock tech tree. You have everything except shipwright, as the Lochuans basically replace cannon galleons. So missing shipwright is certainly a bit of a bummer in the late game. That said, the early careening and dry dock are very nice to have, especially because they are so cheap, and you have everything else available to you on top of getting that extra fire damage against ships and buildings with your demo ships, as well as your super good Lochuans. So yeah, this civ is going to be very good on the water, for sure, although not the best post-temp civ. Defenses are kinda eh. You don't have siege engineers like I mentioned before, but no fortified walls means it can be a little bit difficult to hold on in some situations. You have architecture, but you miss hoardings. You do have heated shot, so that does help you out on water maps. Treadmill crane can be nice to have, but no arrow slits for your keeps and no fortified walls means that this civilization is going to be more about their unit quality as opposed to building quality. Their Fire Archer unique unit is, of course, what you can get at the castle, and this is a pretty funky unit that has a different attack, kind of like the Lochuan, where they attack units in one way and attack ships and buildings in another way, so we'll cover all of that in a little bit. And then, of course, your hero unit does replace the Trebuchet, like with the other Three Kingdom civs. Interestingly, the Wu are the only one of the Three Kingdom civs who have a good monastery. You have everything except Heresy, and considering that the Wu tend to have cheaper and weaker units anyway, missing Heresy isn't really the end of the world, and everything else being available to you does mean that you have monks with most of the tools you need with them at any particular opportunity. So that's certainly nice to have. And then lastly, the eco upgrades. I would say the Wu are probably the weakest civ economically of the Three Kingdoms, but you still have all of the technologies available to you except crop rotation, which is probably the least important one, either that or stone shaft mining. So you have what you need there as far as the eco goes, although again, like I said, it's not the biggest strength. So you can see here that the Wu actually have a lot of different viable options. Yes, they are an infantry civilization, but you have archers there that can be useful in some situations. Same with the Cav, same with the Navy, of course, same with the monks. And in general, compared to the Shu, which feel kind of pigeonholed into siege and archers, and then the Wei, which feel kind of pigeonholed into cavalry and cav archers, the Wu, although they certainly do infantry best, do have other options available to them. So in that sense, I kind of feel like the Wu are a bit more interesting. Still, with the tech tree through, let's take a look at the civilization bonuses and how they are implemented into the game. Alrighty, so first up we have their eco bonus with military production buildings and docks provide plus 65 food. Now, first things first, the dock bonus, it's so good in early water. Like, this bonus alone makes them a very strong civ on water maps, and especially nomad maps. As you can see, we get that 65 food as soon as this dock is completed. So this is going to give you a little bit more than an extra villager, and it's going to help ensure that you don't have any early idle TC time throughout the beginning stages of a water or hybrid map. As to what other buildings this affects, it's kind of exactly what you would expect, I guess, and that's going to be the barracks, get another 65 food there. The archery range, another 65 food. The stable, another 65 food. Siege workshops, another 65 food. Castles, another 65 food. But that is it. Monasteries do not count, as they are not military buildings. No extra food there. And neither are basic defenses, right? So it's not like we can build towers everywhere and get food. Or walls. 65 food per wall segment would be pretty darn busted. So, yeah, just the archery range, barracks, stable, siege workshop, castle, and dock. This is still giving you a lot of food throughout a game, especially at some pretty critical junctures, so it's far from a bad bonus, although it's not going to give you the raw eco power of the Shu or the Wei. A little bit more timing oriented, you have to be a bit more strategic in how you use it compared to the much more straightforward bonuses of the other two Three Kingdoms civs. Next is your main military bonus of infantry regenerating HP through the ages, 10, 20, and 30 HP per minute. Note that this does apply to the exact units you think it would, so champions, halbs, and your Jian Swordsmen. As to how strong the effect is, in the Imperial Age, if we just bump up there, where the effect is at its best, you're getting 30 HP regenerated a minute. How does that compare to Berserks and the HP aura effect of the shoe? Well, we can see here, I click on the Palisade, each of these units take 65 HP worth of damage, and you can see here that the best healing effect based off of regular units is going to be from units under the effect of Lube for the shoe. And then you have Berserks regenerating HP at 40 HP per minute instead of 45, so a little bit worse for the Berserks, although still quite good. And then the HP bonus of the Wu is going to lag behind the most at 30 HP per minute. But as you can see, 30 HP per minute is quite solid. And if we compare that to, say, the Georgians, we get the HP regeneration 2, 8, 14. That is way, 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 way less than you get as the Wu, although cav units are obviously much easier to keep alive than our infantry units. And then some other healing bonuses. You have Maghrebi camels for the Berbers, which is 15 HP per minute, so half of the Imperial Age effect there for the Wu. And then Dravidians have the also 30 HP per minute, but that is for their elephants, and that's, again, only a post-imp boost. But the neat thing with this bonus is that it is available to you starting in the Feudal Age. So already in the early game, you have some of your unit matchup dynamics changed up on their head. So that's pretty neat. So we're not going to test out every single infantry matchup, but already I think this bonus might be at its best in the Feudal Age, because 10 HP a minute in Feudal Age is not half bad, especially if you go for a men-at-arm opening. You take some sort of an engagement and then have to fall back with the unit, which you see a lot with men-at-arm rushes. Then your men-at-arms get to slowly heal up over time as the Wu, which is going to be a really, really helpful boost. So I think that this bonus is probably best in Feudal Age and in Imperial Age. That said, let's just see how much this impacts these straight-up men-at-arm fights. So right here we have generic men-at-arms, then we have our own men-at-arms with the 10 HP a minute. You can see that extra HP regeneration does mean your units take one more hit to go down, which means we are guaranteed to win this fight against generic swordsmen. And then now that the fight is over, we're still going to start healing up even when we're away from a town center. So really, really nice little boost here in the Feudal Age, even if 10 HP per minute doesn't really seem like much, it allows you to win some of these core matchups. That said, the bonus does have its limits, so if we switch over here to facing the Japanese, in the same exact situation, we are almost certainly going to be losing. I probably should have done this test ahead of time just to make sure, but I'm pretty confident that the Japanese are still going to beat us pretty handily, and that does appear to be the case. Yeah, we still get wrecked by the Japanese. So in terms of like raw DPS, you're not really any better. This is more of a boost against generic units as opposed to, okay, your men-at-arms rush is like the best in the game, because that's definitely not the case. Also, I don't need to show you, but it's the same exact thing with spearmen. You get to beat enemy spearmen unless they have a strong bonus, and getting that extra hit to die against scouts is really, really nice. One more Feudal Age test here. Let's see how good the HP regeneration is if we're facing scouts with bloodlines. So we have post-Feudal Age upgrades here on each of these players, and let's see how much of a difference that HP regeneration makes versus what's probably the best overall Feudal Age unit, the Scout with Bloodlines. As Bloodlines is just a ridiculous advantage that you get for Scout Cavalry relative to like every other upgrade that you can get in Feudal Age. So you can see that we still do lose, although it's not quite as big of a loss as with a generic Civ. So all 6 scouts were alive, though some were low HP, versus only half the scouts being alive over here. So as we can expect, it's a good bonus, but still not going to give you, like, obscene men-at-arms. I still think the healing in between fights is going to be the most important aspect of that bonus, especially in Feudal Age. Alrighty, taking things now to the Castle Age, we now have increased our HP regeneration to 20 in a minute, so I guess 3 minutes to fully heal a longswordsman. And just as our starting point, we're going to test versus some generic longswordsmen. Now keep in mind, though, that we don't get gambesons as the Wu, so we'll have to take a look and see the archer difference. But just to establish our base point here, let's try this out versus the generic longswordsman and see if we do get another consistent win. Looks like we do. You can see these low HP dudes healing up just a little bit more, and of course, in a few minutes, all of these units will be back up to full HP anyway. So still a good solid bonus in the mid-game. Alright, so testing now versus crossbowmen. We have 15 of each of our swordsmen here. Well, let's see if that 20 HP regeneration at least makes up for missing gambesons. Well, you guys seem to be derping out a lot. We're doing a lot better. Let's just run this test again, guys. Sometimes doing these tests is a bit harder than we would like. Why are they all going to this one archer? Okay, at least now they're attacking normally. I mean, no test is ever going to be completely perfect. Anyway, it seems like maybe the HP regeneration is enough. I'm still not sold on this test being effective. Now we're going to manually patrol. Okay, well. What are you idiots doing? What on earth are they doing? Why are you going all the way over there? You know what? I give up. Let's just say at least it's around as good as Gambeson's, the extra HP regeneration. At least these tests should be, the idiotic pathing should be relatively similar. Not even pathing, it's targeting. Alright, just to do a quick test with pikemen here, see if, compared to a generic, we're going to be performing a little bit better versus knights. Don't know why all of you weren't attacking at once, but whatever. So it's 20 pikemen versus 15 knights. Wow. Okay, that is pretty darn decisive. Let's try that one more time. I mean, if the HP regeneration is that good, that we completely can flip a fight on its head, then obviously that's going to be huge for the Civ. We lost 6 units here, and 7 there. I mean, so yeah, you do a little bit better. Looks like there's just more bumping in this side. And of course, you still get that heal up in between fights. Let's just see what's going on with the Imperial Age. Alright, so same exact test, but with post-imp upgrades. We win with 11 of our numbers left. Remember, there are way more resources here for the Paladin player. Wow, hold on. Let's try that again. It does seem like we take one more hit to kill. I mean, even still, we're winning with double our numbers left here with the Halves having the 30 HP regen, which is pretty darn sick. And again, we're just getting that healing over time. And again, I can't underline enough that this bonus is most powerful between fights. It's going to be a little bit of a help in fights, and that's what we're testing here, but it's not going to be as good as some of the better infantry bonuses in the game. It's just getting that healing between fights is really helpful. And for one final demonstration, we will go ahead... Alright, and just to prove the champion v champion matchup, and then we'll test to see if the lacking Gambesons matters more in Imperial Age, then we'll call it a test on this HP bonus. Yeah, I mean, you're clearly doing a lot better in the champion v champion fight. But I guess just to super double make sure, we'll switch these over to a strong infantry civ. We'll make player 2 Burmese, who have very good champions, although not like the best champions. So remember, they get 3 extra attack on us. Okay. Okay. That's pretty darn impressive. We're not beating Japanese champs, though. I will be shocked if we beat Japanese champs. It's at least pretty close. Wow, we do actually win. That's pretty insane. Okay, this HP regeneration is even better than I thought. Okay, yeah, your infantry are darn good in the late game. But let's check to see the Gambesons issue. Alright, last test here versus Arbs. 20 Arbs, 15 champions. We do miss that 1 Pierce Armor. Okay, maybe we're like slightly worse than Gambesons. It's at least comparable to Gambesons, which makes sense. So, moral of the story, guys, is your champions, even missing that 1 Pierce Armor, are very, very good in the late game with this HP regen, with the Wu. Just gonna be a good, solid unit. Your Halbs, of course, same exact deal. And we'll test the Jian Swordsmen in a little bit. Still, moral of the story, this is a very solid bonus. I still think it's going to be most useful in between fights and in early game and in post-imp. Alrighty, the next bonus is that the Jian Swordsmen and Heiguang Cavalry gain +2 attack in the Imperial Age. Well, we already tested the bonus with the Heiguang Cavalry, and it's just a good, solid DPS boost. Heiguang Cavalry for the Wu is just a good, well-rounded unit. The Jian Swordsman it's basically just its Shadow Imperial Age upgrade. And we'll test it in the Jian Swordsman section. So we'll just move on now to their last Civ bonus, which is that Careening and Dry Dock are available 1 age earlier, and cost and research time are -75%. Alright, so you can see here, Careening in Feudal Age, we're in Feudal Age, 63 food and 38 gold. Yeah, it's around 100 resources total for this upgrade. It's cheaper than Fletching. And look at this. Look how fast it researches. Now, at anything close to high levels, and I'm even talking about my level here, which is definitely not top level, galley wars are mostly determined by sailing your ships back and forth and microing as if they were cav archers. That said, this will still give us here a bit of an idea as far as the raw DPS difference, just taking that 1 less damage. Careening, guys, I guess I should have explained, it gives you 1 Pierce Armor for your ships. It doesn't have a transport ship effect attached to it anymore because that was changed in the last update. But yeah, now it's just 1 extra Pierce Armor for your ships. So you can see here, guys, it's not making like a monumental difference, but it is still helpful. If you go up to Castle Age, we'll see Dry Dock now available for 150 food and 100 gold. Again, guys, this is cheaper than Bodkin. Now, you still probably want to get Bodkin over this, but it researches super fast, and it will give your ships that nice 15% movement speed boost. Now, this has no impact in the late game, but getting essentially a better version of the Berber bonus in mid-game can be really, really nice as far as timings go. So this is definitely a good, solid team, or bonus. One of the reasons that we were going to be an excellent civ here on the water. Also, the extra Pierce armor helps a lot with your fire ships, but we're not going to go through and test all of that right now. Just know that anything against galleys, the careening is very helpful. Remember, careening does not help you versus fire ships at all. It is purely against galleys and galley-like units that this bonus matters. Well, I mean, faster movement speed is just always good. And it will allow your fire ships to outrun enemy galleys, which is normally not the case. So that's, in mid-game, that's where dry dock is also going to be very helpful. So there are a lot of implications with this bonus. I'm a big fan of it. Anyway, guys, those are the civ bonuses here for the Wu. Their team bonus is houses built 100% faster, and yes, it is absolutely ripped off of the Achaemenids, who have the exact same team bonus. The very first civ and the very last civ. Now, for the life of me, I could not get an AI villager to properly build a house at the same time, but I can just show you right here, guys. Your houses build very, very fast. They build in 12 and a half seconds instead of 25 seconds. So this is just going to be a nice boost here for your team across really all of the early to mid-game. You can get your villagers. Less time spent building houses means more time spent working. Also, it's less of a problem if you end up getting housed, so MBL and Viper are going to be big fans of this for sure. Kappa. But those are the civ bonuses of the Wu. You can see that really all of them give you something a little bit interesting, at least to me. You have to at least think about how you're going to use your extra food bonus. The infantry HP bonus is about how you can take fights better in a lot of ways. This is basically just a straight-up boost in Imperial Age. And then the careening and dry dock bonus, again, you kind of have to think about how you can effectively use that. So I'm actually a fan of these bonuses. Now, to go over the unique techs. Their Castle Age unique tech is Red Cliff's Tactics, 400 food, 250 gold. Demolition ships and fire archers deal fire damage to ships and buildings. Of course, it's not really inherently clear what fire damage does, so just to do a straight comparison, we have our fire archer here, which I'll cover in depth in just a little bit. But just know that it is an archer with anti-building damage to it. So if I have it attack this outpost there, you can see it deals 8 damage with its arrow shot, with no damage over time whatsoever. Demos, you know how demos work. This will blow up against the galleon and deal 110 damage. What about if we add the fire damage, though? So instead of 8 damage, you can see it has a little bit of a fire effect, and it's taking damage over time. So you can see it took 13 damage, so it took 5 damage over time with the fire effect, and it's pretty clear when the upgrade is in. And so you're just getting that nice, consistent damage over time. So just a raw DPS boost. Now, how about here for the demo ship? You can see versus the galleon, it's going to be 110 damage plus the fire damage. So what's that? 110 brings it down to 55 and 7 fire damage there. So a little bit more for the demos. And versus buildings, you can see it's going to be the exact same. And it's going to be a little bit more when the damage is higher. So it is just a straight DPS increase on these units. I don't think it changes the dynamics of demo ship hits too much. It's just more damage. But it's definitely going to help your fire archers a lot versus buildings, which is kind of what they're supposed to be used against. And also versus ships. You can see they also are going to deal that damage over time versus ships. So definitely a strong unique tech you want to pick up if you are going for your unique unit or if you're playing a water map. Now, funnily enough, we've actually gone over their Imperial Age tech already, Sitting Tiger. It's pretty cheap, 400 food, 250 gold, and it gives your traction trebuchets and Lochuan trebuchet weapons additional projectiles. Now, in our testing of both of these units, this basically ended up with a 25% damage increase, which is slightly more than siege engineers versus buildings, which is 20%, but you don't get the extra range of siege engineers, although the extra 25-ish% damage is applicable versus units, right? You know, not building things. So just to show you what it looks like in case you missed those videos, that's what the projectiles normally look like, and we researched the upgrade, and you're getting 2 extra mini projectiles that do not deal full damage, and it ends up being around 25% more damage in total. So good solid DPS boost for your land and sea siege weapons in the late game. But yeah, good solid DPS increased techs for both Castle and Imperial Age here for the Wu. A little situational still because fire archers, demo ships, tracks and trebs, and Lochuans are all situational units. But basically, if you're in the situation where you're making those units, definitely pick up these upgrades. Speaking of the Fire Archer, let's take a look at this unit now, shall we? As our final section is, of course, going to be on the unique units. So here at the castle, we have the Fire Archer, 45 wood and 45 gold. So keep in mind, guys, that the Crossbowman, which is going to be, of course, your nearest one-to-one comparison, is 25 wood and 45 gold. So same gold cost, but a fair bit more wood here for the Fire Archer. It says here, Woo unique foot archer that fires multiple arrows at units and uses a long-range attack against buildings. Strong versus infantry, siege weapons, and buildings. Weak versus cavalry and skirmishers. So, what are these guys all about? Before we look at their really weird damage mechanics, let's just take a look at the raw stats comparison. So, in the Castle Age, you can see that the Fire Archer and Crossbowman have the same HP, and the same movement speed, the same armor, same range, but the Fire Archer fires a lot slower at 3.5, which is a pretty darn slow reload time, and is the same as a hand cannoneer. Well, about the same as a hand cannoneer. So that combined with the lower base attack should mean that the DPS of the Fire Archer is a fair bit worse. But of course it has the special attack, as we'll get to in a little bit. However, archers only deal bonus damage versus spearmen. You can see the Fire Archer deals bonus damage versus spearmen, not as much, but still a bit of damage. It does 4 bonus damage versus buildings, 3 versus ships, and 3 versus fishing ships. So you do get some bonus damage. Now, what the heck does the damage profile of this unit look like? So whereas the archer will shoot, and it'll just deal 5 damage an arrow, the Fire Archer will shoot, and against units, it'll fire extra projectiles. You can see here, the extra projectiles are super inaccurate, but they will deal at least semi-decent damage. If we go in point-blank range, so all the projectiles hit, you can see we dealt 18 damage. So all the 3 projectiles all dealt 4 damage. But that's if they all hit, and you can see that the projectiles are pretty inaccurate. They also don't all fire at the exact same time. So we'll see in the DPS tests just how well that breakdown works versus regular units. Now, unfortunately, like the Lochuan, this is where the UI is really going to fail us in AoE2. The damage profile versus buildings and ships is a bit different. It says they have 5 range here, but against buildings, it's actually longer. If you turn the grid on, you can see here, we can knock at this building from way more than 5 range. So as it turns out, this is 9 range versus the 5 range of the Crossbowman. So versus buildings, these Fire Archers deal a lot of, I guess, range damage. Also, you only fire 1 arrow, and that's going to be getting that bonus damage versus buildings. Also note that versus siege weapons, you fire your regular shots, and you're not all that great. So same deal versus ships, you do get that 9 range. And something I also wanted to know is that range increased by the fletching line upgrades? And as you can see here, that answer is yes. This is actually 10 tiles away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So with full upgrades, you will actually go all the way up to 11 range, which is the same as any defensive structure with Bracer. So you do outrange anything with that doesn't have the Bracer upgrade, but with Bracer, you still can't outrange defensive structures. That's where you're still going to be reliant on your traction trebuchets. As for the Elite upgrade, you can see here it gives you 5 more HP, 1 more attack, 1 more range. So you actually have 6 range on these guys, same as a Longbowman. Although versus buildings, I think it's still the same 9 range? Wait, I think we get 1 more range. Does that mean we can outrange fully upgraded castles with Fire Archers? Alright, so I'm just checking to see here, do we indeed outrange? Okay! Learning experience for me, guys. You do outrange defensive structures, only by 1. Wait, no, by 2? Yeah, you have 13 range here. I counted up the tiles. Okay. So that is very good long-range siege damage. Well, I mean, it's not good damage, but you do deal it from a long ways off. But that's good to know. Anyway, to finish the comparison, when it comes to bonus damage, you get 4 versus buildings on both versions of the unit, same with spearman damage. You get a little bit more bonus damage versus ships with the Elite Fire Archer, but other than that, it is the same. So the Fire Archer is an interesting unit. I think it's still a little weird that you have units that deal 1 damage one way and then another type of damage the other way, but that does seem to be part of the direction that this DLC is going, and I think I would probably be feeling more comfortable with this in AoE2 if it was better shown in the UI. That said, the actual implementation of the Fire Archer is pretty interesting, and let's see how they perform versus their regular archer brethren. Oh, bamboo testing enclosure, it's been too long since I've been able to see you. Alrighty guys, so here we have post-Castle Age upgrades. equal resources, it's actually 25% more resources for the fire archers. So we have 20 crossbowmen versus these 15 fire archers. Let's see how they perform. Also, I was looking up the unit in the Genie editor, and they do deal a little bit of blast damage. That said, we don't do so hot in terms of regular unit-to-unit combat. Let's see if it makes much of a difference if I just have them with even numbers. Yeah, it's 0.25 blast radius, so these clumped up units will be taking a little bit of extra damage. That said, against units, this guy is, or I guess against other crossbowmen, this guy's pretty unspectacular. Let's see versus skirmishers now. Maybe the weird damage profile of the fire archer can help us here. I only have 15 skirmishers, which is way cheaper for the skirmishers, but I didn't want to get completely nuked, as this still should be an effective counter. Alright, this is pretty underwhelming. The crossbowmen are definitely doing better in this regard. Alright, moral of the story, guys, don't use fire archers against ranged units. Alrighty, now looking at just raw DPS, I do have these guys patrolling back and forth so that they're a little bit clumped up. So this should make the fire archer look a little bit better, because it does deal, like I said, that small amount of blast damage. Let's see how these guys are doing against the blob of infantry units here. Yeah, having half the reload time for the crossbowmen seems pretty good. And remember that these guys have the same HP as knights in Castle Age, so the test would look exactly the same as knights, just slower. Knights have double the HP. So they're not bad, so to say, versus infantry, but so far not super stoked on this unit. Still, they are sort of siege units, so let's see just how much better they are against buildings. Also, this is post-unique tech, because it looks cool. Now, the crossbowmen deal 1 damage here. Obviously, we're dealing more than that. Alright, so you can see 15 of these guys are really starting to nuke this building. Did someone say Obsidian Arrows is back on the menu, boys? Okay. They are good against buildings, that is for sure. I'm curious to see if Masonry makes a difference, though. This will see if it's the armor type, the anti-building damage that is blocked by Masonry, or the one that isn't. Okay, this definitely looks like you get the Swordsman version of the anti-building damage, which means that it is not impacted by Masonry. Otherwise, we'd barely be doing any extra damage here. Alright, so yeah, even with Masonry, all you're getting here is the extra HP, not the extra armor, insofar as it's dealing with these fire archers. So, in that case, they definitely do their job. Now, here's the real question. Are they better against buildings than our long swordsmen? Because 1, swordsmen are very good versus buildings, and 2, you have good swordsmen as the woo. So obviously you get to start attacking first. Also, this is equal resources. Swordsmen are cheaper than fire archers. Alright, so swordsmen are still way better at knocking down buildings, but it's a matter of you get to do this from the safety of distance, right? Kind of like how mangonels are often used versus buildings instead of rams, because mangonels can attack buildings from a distance. So swordsmen, raw DPS versus buildings, still a lot better. That said, it's still respectable damage here from the fire archer, and they can do it from such a long and safe distance, which is going to be really annoying as far as getting pushed in the mid-game goes. Alrighty, moving on to the post-Imperial Age with full upgrades. Keep in mind, again, that you don't have ring archer armor here as the woo. And we're back to versus Arbalest, and let's just see if that blast damage is going to be enough now with all the upgrades in to at least take down this blob of champions faster, hopefully. My hopes aren't very high, though, I must confess. And again, this is a best-case scenario here for the fire archers, as they are getting that blast damage, and even so, the Arbalests are still absolutely cooking them, which is pretty ironic considering that it's the fire archers with their fiery fireness. So, what can we say about the fire archer? Versus units, it's a subpar archer. It's not that great. But it does have that shared utility where it's very good versus buildings. Not like siege weapon good, but you can still take buildings down at least a little bit from a distance, which is pretty darn nice. And so you have this flexibility, right? It's an archer that isn't that phased by buildings. Although if you want just a raw anti-unit unit, then you'd rather just have the archer line. So that's at least a little bit interesting. I don't know if these guys are going to be good or not. The long range is very, very nice. But I'm not completely sold on how good these guys are going to be in actual combat. And I don't know if the anti-building capacity of this unit is enough to justify making a ton of them over, say, traction trebuchets. So this is a unit that it's really going to need to get some playtesting to see if it's going to be good or not in like regular games, but I'm at least intrigued by this unit. I'll give it that much. I'm intrigued. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention its elite cost is 800, so fairly expensive for a unique unit. Anyway, we have one more unit to cover, and that is the Jian Swordsmen. This is an infantry unit available in the Castle Age. It is 45 food and 50 gold, so very expensive for an infantry unit. It says, Woo unique shock infantry that gains movement speed and attack, but loses armor when a damage threshold is reached. Exceptionally strong versus archery units, weak versus the militia line. So remember that shock infantry basically equals Eagle Warrior armor class, equals countered by regular infantry. So what is this unit all about? Alrighty, so the comparisons here for the Jian Swordsmen are going to be versus both the regular swordsmen and Eagle Warriors, as they both share some similarities there. But what does it mean by switching modes once a damage threshold is reached? Well, I'll show you. So I'll tell you right now, it switches modes once it is below 45 HP. You can see it's switched right there. What's interesting, though, is as soon as it gets to 46 HP, which it will in a second, it will switch back to its heavy armor mode. So this unit can switch forms back and forth depending on its HP. But if I knock it down below, at least a ways below, you can see that the two units, 3 more attack for this mode of the Jian Swordsman, same amount of bonus damage. You have 0-2 armor versus 3-5, and you move 10% faster. So that's the difference here between the two units. And something else I want to point out right away is that it's kind of weird, because if you like double click on the unit, both modes are selected at once. So what I don't really know is how we can effectively use the different modes of the unit. Like in a fight, how are we supposed to micro one group of Jian Swordsmen versus the others if they're still classified as the same unit? So I'm a little confused as to how that's going to go. Anyway, as you saw there, 4 bonus damage versus archers is pretty darn nice. And then 3-5 armor is enormous. You also have 1 shock infantry armor, which means that you do take 1 less anti-Eagle Warrior bonus damage, although you still take a lot. Now, if we compare this to the regular long swordsman in Castle Age, you can see that you have 1 less attack, but 10 more HP, and way more armor, and a slightly faster movement speed. But again, remember that your Jian Swordsmen are very expensive. Yeah, 3-5 armor is pretty ridiculous. Compare that to Eagle Warriors, 0-3 armor. They have 55 HP to 70, 7 attack, although you get more bonus damage. Well, you don't get any bonus damage versus archers, so you get more pure anti-archer bonus damage as the Jian Swordsman, but you move a lot slower. 1.15 movement speed to 1.1. So that even the speedy mode Jian Swordsman is still slower than an Eagle Warrior. Still, the stats are very high for this unit. Let's see how this changes with post-imp upgrades. So remember, there is no elite Jian Swordsman upgrade. It's just the same thing, but you get 2 more attack in the Imperial Age. That said, in imp, compared to a champion, its attack is going to look a lot worse. You have 14 attack versus 18 attack. That said, your armor stats are still pretty crazy. The champion's going to catch right up in terms of HP, so it's 70 for both of these units. And if we compare them to, say, a Mayan Eagle Warrior, you can see that the Mayan Eagle Warrior has a way faster movement speed. I'll show you guys, 1.43 movement speed here for the elite Eagle Warrior. And even in speedy mode, it's only 1.21, so the Eagles move a lot faster than the Jian Swordsman, even in the best of circumstances. So it's a weird unit. Let's see how it performs with our final round of tests. Alrighty, so in the straight-up matchup versus the Swordsman, you'd expect the Jian Swordsman to get wrecked, as they are still a shock infantry unit. So even with all that extra armor, they are an expensive unit, and yeah, it is not remotely close. They do not do well versus the Swordsman at all. However, against their Eagle Warrior buddies, the other main shock infantry, I think they should be doing a lot better with all of their extra armor. Oh yeah, they're crushing the Eagle Warriors. Wow, we lost 3 units, and there were more Eagle Warriors. There were 24 Eagle Warriors versus 20 Jian Swordsmen. Alright, so I mean, in the straight-up fight, you're doing quite well here for the Jian Swordsman. Now let's try versus some other units. Alrighty, so these guys are supposed to be anti-archer units, so let's see how they do versus this comically large blob of crossbowmen. And now we are going to be comparing them to Eagle Warriors and to the Swordsman line. I guess these are non-Gambeson Swordsmen, but they're not supposed to be doing that well versus archers anyway. I mean, you guys saw I had a huge freaking number of archers, and these guys did not care at all. Jeez. Alright. I mean, they're basically Huskarls in that regard, and of course they are still a Wu infantry, so they gain a bunch of extra HP. You can see even the Eagle Warriors, they aren't doing that hot. Jeez. Now remember, Eagles are going to be much better at actually engaging the archers with their faster movement speed. So in terms of like microing back and forth, that is going to be worse for the Jian Swordsman than the Eagle Warrior. But I mean, in that fight, holy cow, this unit just obliterated a gigantic number of crossbowmen. All right, so now let's try versus these knights. Equal resources here. Oh, I now realize I should be using Wu Swordsmen here instead of the Inca ones. My bad. Not that we were caring too much versus the archers, but versus the knights it is relevant. Let's run that test again with our own swordsman, which is going to be the thing that we would be making instead. All right, so compared to our own swordsman in this case, so we actually have the extra HP regeneration. What the heck are those? What? All right, that took several tries of me failing. Let's for realsies try it with our own swordsman as our point of comparison. Yeah, especially with our HP regenning swordsmen, we have to imagine that they're going to be doing better than the Jian Swordsmen for less than half the gold cost, I think? Maybe? Okay, so the knights still trade reasonably well here. The eagles all die, though, as well. 4 units left, 3 units left, so yeah, they're all around as good against knights. You could still say that knights are a soft counter to the Jian Swordsmen. Alrighty, last Castle Age test versus Light Cav, of course. Swordsmen and Eagles are seen both at... Well, Swordsmen are a hard counter to the scout line. Eagles, it's a little bit more of a softish counter, but they are much faster. Let's see if there's any noticeable difference here across these 3 units. Yeah, I mean, it's around the same. Maybe the Eagles kill them the fastest because of their extra bonus damage. Remember, they do have 3 bonus damage against Cav. But yeah, you're still doing just fine there versus Light Cav. Now let's try Imperial Age, though, and I have the feeling that this unit is going to not perform as well in Imp. Alright, so straight up versus Champions. Again, this was a slaughter in the Castle Age. I imagine it's going to be just as bad, if not worse, in the Imperial Age. Because remember, Champions deal 8 bonus damage against us, and we absorb only 1 of that. Yeah, it is not close. Do not use Jian Swordsman versus Champions in late game. All right, versus the El Dorado Eagle Warriors of Mayans. We did well in Castle Age, but let's see how we perform versus the best of the best Eagle Warriors. Yep, we still win. So in those head-to-head fights versus Eagle Warriors, you are always going to be doing well against the other shock infantry. Good to know. Already versus the gigantic blob of Arbalests. I'm using Mayan Eagle Warriors here, which are actually the mid-ground unit between Aztecs, who are the weakest versus archers, and the strongest, which are Incas in that regard. And of course, some of these units are shooting over, because why make my life easier? Anyway, the champions are getting obliterated, even with these archers trying to help. It does not even matter, man. The Jian Swordsmen are still working just fine. Wow. So, of course, the Eagle Warriors are also going to do quite well. But yeah, even with a little bit of interference right there, the Jian Swordsmen are able to crush a gigantic number of Arbalests if they can close the gap. Although again, that is going to be much harder than the Elite Eagle Warriors, who move quite significantly faster. Alrighty, just a couple more tests here. We'll try versus Hussars. Although again, remember, the Jian Swordsman has a very, very high gold cost. So even though we should be winning this fight, the champions are going to be, 1, the fastest at doing it, and 2, the most gold efficient. And you can see that although we are beating the Hussars, the Eagles are doing better, and of course the champions did way, way better. So, versus Hussars, it's kind of yes, you're good against them, but you don't really feel as great as some of the other options that are available. Alright, our very last test. Versus Paladins. Again, we're gonna lose, at least we should be losing, with equal resources. I just want to see how much worse we're performing than champions. I mean, the champions aren't even doing all that bad here with the Wu here. Wow, the champions even won versus the Paladins. And of course, El Dorado Eagle Warriors are a very fun and balanced unit. So yeah, the Jian Swordsman definitely doing the worst there. Resource efficient for the Mayans and for our Wu champion. So Jian Swordsmen, they're going to be good against other shock infantry and good against archers. And they're going to be like solid melee combat units, but am I like insanely impressed with this unit against anything other than archers? Not especially. It's going to be good versus archers. I will say, though, that I don't really get its gimmick of changing its stance. It just feels like it's going to be so hard to make any practical, deliberate use out of it. Still, it could be interesting. Oh, I almost forgot our hero unit. How could I forget the hero units? All right, so Sun Jian, who is your hero unit for the Wu, is super straightforward. It's a 15% movement speed buff in the same 10 tile radius that is all of the other heroes. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to show off as far as that goes. It just makes all your units nearby faster, so that's pretty darn good. I mean, 15% movement speed buff is huge. Like, it's a very powerful effect, but it's very straightforward, right? So good effect there. It'll be a nice help in the mid game, or in the late game rather, for taking those perfect engagements. Alrighty, guys. So final thoughts on the Wu. There are some aspects that I'm definitely not a fan of, like the fact that they exist in the game at all. That said, I do think that they are by far the most interesting of the Three Kingdoms civs. You have some fun bonuses with the extra food you get from your buildings. They regenerating HP can be used in like very deliberate and intelligent ways as opposed to just like more HP. It just feels kind of, it's very straightforward. Your unique units, I'm a little confused about. The Fire Archer and the Jian Swordsmen. I'm not entirely sure, one, how good they are, and two, the best usage of them. And I think that they're a little weird, but I at least see some potential there. But other than that, this civ, guys, it's going to be a good civ on hybrid maps and on water maps. I don't know if they're going to be like Japanese or Persians or Lithuanians good on hybrid maps, but they're probably going to be somewhere up there near the top. On water maps, you're still probably going to be worse than like the very, very best civs, like Vikings, Italians, Koreans, and Armenians, but still pretty viable. And I think that this civ is just going to be viable on land maps too. Again, your eco isn't crazy, but you have a good tech tree, you have options available to you. The Fire Archer can push on both open and closed maps effectively. I will say that unlike the Shu and the Wei, these guys don't really slot into the team game meta at all, really anywhere. So this does feel like maybe more of a 1v1 civ right now, except on water maps. But yeah, it's an interesting civ to say the least, especially relative to the Wei and the Shu, in my opinion. That said, guys, we're done. We have completed our introduction series for the Three Kingdoms. Thank you so much to everybody who has joined me on my long, rambling testings. But it's been a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of support for these videos, so I really, really appreciate that. Of course, extra special shout out to my Patreon supporters with Dan and Jared in the Great Wolf tier, and then Carolyn, Dieter, Liquid Egg Product, Triru, and Tandoori Knight in the Dire Wolf tier. Thank you guys all so much for watching. And stay tuned next for the actual campaigns of the Three Kingdoms DLC. See you guys for that.